Up-to-date weather scans on WKZB FM Stereo 95.3, serving Drew, Indianola, Moorhead, Alameda, and the Greater Delta area.
Jeff Baselli was at the state penitentiary at Parchman today and filed this story.
A death row inmate at Parchman is scheduled to die in the gas chamber in 2 weeks. Edward Earl Johnson was convicted of the 1979 shooting death of Walnut Grove Marshal J.T. Tress. Johnson's attorneys and the American Civil Liberties Union say they've got a strategy to save the inmate from execution on the 20th of May. Edward Earl Johnson was convicted of the 1979 shooting death of Walnut Grove Marshal J.T. Tress. Johnson's attorneys and the American Civil Liberties Union say they've got a strategy to save...
Did you need to talk back to me? Go to hell, man. Go to hell. Now get this new grind. Thank you, boss. I don't need that mouth. Let's not tell me what squad this is. What we like to do. And what we gonna do. All right, what are we? That's what I'm talking about. Snatch it on back. Get it clean this time. Get it clean this time. Ain't nothing but a game.
This film is about the death penalty in the state of Mississippi and the effect it has on the staff and inmates as time runs out for one 26-year-old man, Edward Earl Johnson. Johnson has been appealing against his sentence for 8 years in the United States courts. He was convicted in 1979 of killing a Mississippi town marshal and the attempted rape of a 60-year-old woman. He has spent the last 8 years on this death row and has always professed his innocence.
I say we'll meet next Friday. The only thing that might cancel that is if he receives a stay of execution between now and then. So at this point in time, the Attorney General's office still feels very much like the execution will be a go. All of y'all know, that could change right up to midnight, the 20th. I got one last thing to say, and then I'm going to try to start getting ready to get out of here. I will not tolerate one off-color remark by anybody on this staff about the execution. And just because I don't have to look forward to doing my job in this kind of situation doesn't mean that I can't be tolerant of others who perhaps look forward a little more eagerly to doing it, but they can look forward to it and still do it in a professional manner. And I assure you, I've never been more serious about a threat that I've made since I've been here. If I hear anything that I don't like from staff of this institution, they are going to answer to me directly and personally. I'm sure I'll be stuck with an action later, but the personnel department will have to clean it up, and that's a promise. I'll get rid of them.
Cell 10.
This boy's family did not murder this police officer. This boy's family did not ask for their son to be in this situation. They didn't raise him to be in this predicament. And I've done some checking and looking into records and stuff as a matter of curiosity, and this guy isn't from some family of bozos, This guy represents a situation that could happen to anybody. You got some heartbroken parents that spent 7 years trying to figure out what the hell went wrong. We don't execute rapists and armed robbers anymore, and so when we do execute people, we execute people that situationally anybody could find themselves in the same shoes. You get a bad mixture of booze and bad character, or dope and booze and poor judgment, and my son, your daughter could end up on death row, and by God, that doesn't make me bad. That does not make me bad as a parent, and that means that that family's entitled to a modicum of respect from this department and this institution, and I'm going to have it. And I'll tell you why I'm so adamant about that. because I'm concerned about some of the kind of stuff that I hear rumbling-wise about people being upset about not being involved in this, that, and other thing. It's like I said to Don Hocutt and a couple of others of you last night, I worry about people who are eager to stand in line to methodically strap somebody into a chair and kill them.
Me tough, I ain't kidding.
That was a good move. I think I can get that one bill.
I know you don't want to do that.
Yeah, I want to do that.
Oh, no.
Where are you tonight? All right, boss.
Last time I was out here talking with you, I asked you whether or not, if this thing proceeds to the negative conclusion, whether you wanted any medication on the last thing. I asked you to think about that. What do you think?
I ain't gave it nothing.
Well, I'm not going to ask you about it anymore, especially since your lawyers told you, not to converse with me. Anything else on your mind? I guess this is going to be the last time you and I talk for a while.
They set a date for me for May 20th to be executed. If I don't get no relief from my review from the United States Supreme Court, I'll be executed. Sometime I'm depressed. I mean, all I think about, the funny thing is, I think about a future. Now that might seem kind of crazy. Now what future could I possibly have in knowing that I might supposedly be executed in the next 2 weeks? I can't plan on the future, but I think about the future. And I think about my past. The things I used to do, the people I know, the people that care about me, I think of them. I think of all that.
At the scene of the crime, where Johnson allegedly robbed a 60-year-old woman and killed the local town marshal, an old Buick car was seen. Because Johnson owned a Buick, he was arrested with others and put in front of an identity parade. The woman who was robbed and nearly raped had known Edward Johnson most of his life.
After she saw me, she told the investigators that she knew me and know that I wasn't the one that broke in her home, because
She told them that you weren't the
she
one.
told me I wasn't the one. She said the person who broke in was about my size, but maybe a little heavier and had a full beard. And at that time, I don't have no beard, never had one. And after that, they let me go. They picked me up again. They said they had some questions. They asked me about the gun, and they kept badging about the gun. That didn't work, so they asked me would I be willing to take a lie detector test. So like I told them, I ain't did nothing. Yeah, I'd take it. So I freely, gave them permission. Yeah, I'd take a lie detector test. So that means they had to take me to Jackson. On the way to Jackson, they pulled over. They told me, you gonna tell us something that we want to hear, or you ain't going home. They said, Nigga, all we have to say is that you jumped out the car and ran. And you know, then I didn't know what to think. I mean, I'm 18-year-old, I'm side of the road, with nobody around to say anything in my behalf. I mean, you know, it's on a Sunday evening late. I don't know nobody in this area. Nobody's behind me, following me, none of my relatives with me. I got a sheriff and an investigator with me. And they talking crazy, you know. They both white and I'm black in the back seat in Mississippi at that, on the side of the road, and they done told me this. I don't know what to do. It was a choice of, you might say, telling them anything or go ahead and let them, you know, do what they said they were gonna do. So what they did then was they turned on a tape recorder and they went over the whole incident in their own words and made me repeat that into the tape recorder.
The officers returned with Johnson to the sheriff's department. Using the tape recording made on the side of the freeway, they wrote out a confession and asked Johnson to sign it.
All I asked him, what is it? I ain't signing that. I don't know what this is. He said, don't worry about what it is, don't read it, just sign it. So I signed it.
Why?
Well, basically, because he told me to sign it, and I was scared, you know. I don't know, but they got me by myself. Nobody knows where I'm at, you know. The last time that my relatives, anybody knew where I was at was I was supposed to be on the way to Jackson, so that's where they thought I was at.
Did you ask for a lawyer?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
I don't remember. Really, I didn't know. You know, I didn't know no rights. When we was at the interstate, nobody didn't read me no rights. When my lawyers tried to attack the confession, you know, as to how it was obtained, they didn't want to hear that. All they wanted to know was, look, we got it, and that's all that counts. He's guilty. I was guilty before I was convicted and guilty before I even went to trial, you know? And the main part was that a white man was killed, and they have a black man accused of doing it, and they said he done it. And that was it.
Ready?
Larry, what'd you do with the gas mask?
They're on the hood of that pickup out there, in those bags. Okay. Don, ready for the sign-on?
$8:31. 8:31.
8:41. Okay, we're ready.
You ready to flip it?
last night, officer came down and he told us that they was conducting some kind of test outside for the gas chamber. I gathered that they was trying it out, you know. And, when he said that, it gripped me, you know. And, you know, they trying it out. Not only gripped me in my heart, but it gripped everybody else. Because it's the thoughts, you know. They just already assuming that they're gonna kill me. You could hear the same sounds, almost identical, same smell when they executed the last man. They said cyanide smells sort of like almonds or cinnamon or something. If my appeals don't succeed, if they're rejected, I only have 12 days to do it. Matter of fact, everyone here is up there. Not only me, they're thinking about themselves. At what point will they have to face this?
Do you personally believe in the death penalty?
I guess the best way to answer that is to give a qualified yes. And I don't believe in it as a deterrent to crime because statistically, I don't think you can prove or disprove whether it's really effective as a deterrent or not. I think the death penalty represents nothing more than the ultimate punishment for the most heinous crimes that society feels have to be dealt with in a final fashion. I certainly have little trouble believing in it for child killers, for people who, like this young man, murdered a police officer. I'll have to admit, 20 years ago, I felt pretty strongly opposed to the death penalty. But then I was just back from Vietnam and was just beginning a career in corrections, and I think I thought that after what I'd seen and participated in Vietnam, that there had to be a better way to do things other than killing, no matter what the purpose was. But 20 years in corrections has a way of influencing your outlook on things, and I think there has to be an ultimate penalty.
Take this over there. Okay, I'm gonna come on around and I'll meet you on the other side. They'll go ahead and let you through there and I'll come meet you on the other side, okay? Oh, we gotta go.
Leo!
You're gonna take the handcuffs off here, you're gonna take the handcuffs off here.
Are you gonna put them in front or side or?
It's kind of hard for him to sit down like that if you get. It may never get to the 20th.
It may.
God may intervene before the 20th ever gets here. He's, Scripture talks about him working in mysterious ways, and
yeah.
So it may never get here. It may get here, and you may have to face it. But I know that what you're saying is the frustration of getting up for tomorrow and then getting down again.
Getting down. But overall, this is what I think, Cape. Overall, it's all in the hands of God. Mm-hmm. It's you know, doubt clouds in at times. Mm-hmm. But you know, if you put your trust and your whole heart in it, in God, see, He erase all that doubt.
Yeah.
And give you a feeling of, you know, you relax. You just don't have no worries. Now, I don't believe that really it's all sunk in yet. It couldn't have, because if it all sunk in, I'd probably be done run my head through this wall or something. You know what I'm saying? But I look at it like this. 10 days. Have I ever been this close to death before? I guess I get afraid at times. Yeah, every time I hear a door squeak, I'm looking, you know, I'm wondering. I heard noise banging out there by the gas chamber myself. Will they bang the door on me? I often look out at it, gazing, you might say. Thinking. But see, the thing about it, it's been there for the 7 years I've been here. There's nothing new to look at. There's nothing new to look at.
I'm sort of straddling the fence as far as the death penalty is concerned. I don't know, sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. So really, I'm sort of straddling the fence. Something needs to be done for some of the crimes that's committed, but I'm not sure that the death penalty is the answer. I figure that if a person can't give a life, why should he be able to take one? I don't know. So I got mixed feelings about it. Regardless of whether it's the gas chamber, legal injection, or the electric chair, regardless of the method, you know, it'll take a life. So really, whatever method they use doesn't really make any difference, you know, for that's concerned.
One thing common of all of us here is that we have no money. You know, we couldn't afford quality representation, the type of representation that would have made a fair trial possible. It takes money to fight the state. The state has all the resources in the world when they're trying to seek a death sentence. They have all the resources at their disposal. 9 times out of 10, we're stuck with an attorney who doesn't even have a moral conviction that the death penalty is wrong. You see, and what he does is function like an assistant to the DA. You know, the attorneys that represent most poor indigents are state-appointed attorneys. You see, when you consider the economic factor, they're not the attorneys that do represent individuals in this situation at the trial level. They're not going against the state. The state pay their salary.
Statistically, in the United States at the moment, the figures show that if you're poor and black, you're more likely to end up on death row. Do you find that true?
In Mississippi, about 67% of the entire incarcerated population is poor, undereducated, black males. So, yes, statistically, the poor, undereducated minority is probably more likely to receive a death sentence based on the fact that they do not have funds to hire the best and the most appropriate legal assistance. The system is unjust, but the system in the fact that 63% of the people in prison or in Mississippi are minorities is just as unjust as that percentage of blacks, minorities getting a death sentence. Either way, we're talking about an unjust situation that's based on the amount of funds that you have available or the lack of funds you have. So, no, the system is not perfect.
Sure, I'm on death row, and everyone expects me to say how wrong the death penalty is. But I'm saying how wrong the death penalty is because I see how wrong it is. I'm experiencing it. Society hasn't experienced it because it hasn't touched society in the emotional or in the individual sense.
Do you believe in the death penalty for some crimes?
At one point I did. At one point. But seeing how the death penalty is being applied, no, I don't.
The majority of Americans would think that a lot of people here on this death row have committed a lot of appalling crimes, murder, etc. And that you should be here. What do you say to most people?
Most people only hear what authority is telling them. As I said, they're not aware of the facts. They're not aware of the person. I feel they're being misled.
Well, I've been in this situation for 11 years. Initially, I was charged with capital murder and convicted in November 1976.
How have you coped with that 11 years? It's a long time.
It's a long time. I would guess my belief in God has something to do with it. And I've asked myself that question before too. You know, as a black person, as a citizen of this country, you know, my people have always had to endure oppression and repression and of this kind. You know, so it's part of my experience. You know, it's in my consciousness, you know, to cope. And I feel the same way about Earl. That, you know, I share the experience. What he's going through, I'm sharing that with him. It's psychological torture that's involved, because that's what it is. You know, up to the point where they take him out and execute him. You know, it's torture. I mean, we all go through this. We all going through this with him, everybody here. But it's a bad time.
Superpower WABG. This is News Watch 6. A death row inmate at Parchment is scheduled to die in the gas chamber in less than 2 weeks. Edward Earl Johnson was convicted of the 1979 shooting death of Walnut Grove Marshal J.T. Trest. Johnson's attorneys and the American Civil Liberties Union say they've got a strategy to save the inmate from execution on the 20th of May. They declined to give details of that plan, but did say there are racial factors to consider in the Johnson case. They say a recent study shows those who kill whites are more likely to be sentenced to death than those who kill blacks. Johnson is black and the victim was white. Newswatch 6 asked several of our viewers if they think Johnson should go to the gas chamber.
What do you think about the case? Do you think Johnson should be executed or not?
Well, I'm totally against the death penalty under any circumstances. I don't think that a life for a life accomplishes anything, so I don't think it should be executed at any rate, whether the person is black or white.
Do you think Johnson should be executed or not?
Well, I always believe if somebody murdered someone, that they should pay for it with their own life.
The conditions here are similar to slavery time. The only thing difference between now and 1860 is the year. The word games are just that, you know, it's mostly like a make-work situation, whereas rather than just sitting idle as we do, they give them something to do, you know, cleaning up around here, cutting grass, digging ditches, you know, it's slavery modified into today's world. You know, it's just a big plantation that's been changed by the name. You know, instead of calling it a plantation, they call it a farm. But, you know, there's no difference in it.
What we've got here is the petition for you on, you know, going to the Mississippi Supreme Court. We have to go there first because you have to do that. There's absolutely no chance of actually achieving anything there because they've already made up their minds that they want to see you go on the 20th. But hopefully we'll be out of there in a couple of days so we can go straight into federal court. And that's where something's going to happen. I mean, when you get to read through this stuff, there's some really serious stuff in it, and the ineffectiveness claim would win in any reasonable case. Our problem, of course, is the publicity and the pressure that people are going to feel on all this. And in a fair world, you're going to win, but the world isn't always unfair, so we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed and keep praying. The facts of the case, though, is that you're a black kid in Leake County, which has got a bunch of Klan people, and they go around, they go around shooting freedom riders, and then they get acquitted, you know. And the fact is that you're accused of basically attempting to rape a white woman and killing a white police officer. Those are the two most heinous things that for a white person in Mississippi can happen. The fact that they misadvised you is one prong of what we have to show. The other side we have to show is that the result would have been different. whatever happens, we're going to file in the federal district court on Friday because we can't wait any longer. We're talking about next Wednesday for the date. Yeah. So if we file then, there are two options. Either we'll get a stay right away if he believes everything we've said in the petition, or he'll think there are some procedural bars and we've got to have a hearing on this, in which case we'll probably have a hearing on it Monday morning. And at that stage, he'll either give a stay or not give a stay Monday afternoon. The last two cases we've had got stayed the day before the thing. Yeah. So, you know, unfortunately, it's a nasty experience to get that close to the thing.
I'm beginning to feel the pressure personally a little bit more than I thought I would a week ago, or even a month ago. I think probably that's increased since I've talked to this guy a couple of times. I haven't forgotten what he's here for, but there's no question that over a period of time, some of the barriers you might think would be there forever begin to come down a little bit, and I probably am going to avoid talking to Johnson any more than I have to from here on out until Tuesday, when I'll probably be spending a fair amount of time with him.
Are you sure he's guilty?
I think I'm as sure as I think you can be from reading the record of what happened. The testimony was pretty clear. I don't have any difficulty with that.
Are you expecting a stay?
I think it's a possibility, but I think because of the way things are going, that it could be rather late in the game. As these things go, I don't expect a stay, if one comes, until probably Monday at the earliest, and very possibly not until Tuesday. All right, the week's half over. We're almost to Friday. Can't get much better than that except payday. We're getting him up here now. We're going to have to talk to him and kind of just catch up on what arrangements he wants to make concerning the execution, his meals, and all that stuff. How has he been behaving?
He, well, for the last 6 months, since I've been over here, no problem. No problem so far.
How you doing, Edward? Okay?
Yep.
All right?
Yep,
I'm fine. Come on in, let me talk at you for a minute like we did last week. Barry, you want to call me? Sonny, he's just fine, our friend. He indicated to me quite freely, without being prodded, he's not having any trouble sleeping. He was aware by hearing on the news that the state Supreme Court had turned his stay down, but he's hopeful of other avenues. He is not wanting for anything. We covered again what arrangements he wanted to make for his family visiting. He again indicated he certainly realizes time is getting short, but he remains cautiously optimistic. And in short, he's probably in better mental condition than I. Thanks. The interesting thing is, of course, that his attorneys, in the motions they have filed with the court, they are asking the court now to stay his execution because he is not sane. And the basis upon which they have concluded he's not sane is that he is too calm. Anybody as close to being executed as he is should not be nearly as calm about the whole thing as he is. So they're obviously grasping for straws, which, you know, is understandable. They're doing their job. But it suggests that they really just haven't got much left to deal with.
Now, a convicted killer's last resort. Today, the state Supreme Court denied a request to delay the execution of Edward Earl Johnson. He's scheduled to die next Wednesday. The nation's highest court previously refused to hear Johnson's last direct appeal. His lawyers are asking the justices to reconsider. The decision from Washington could come Monday. Johnson is on death row for killing a Walnut Grove town marshal.
In a way, I've been preparing this for 19 years in a career, preparing for it. I think that I understand, I'm beginning to understand, and probably will understand even better after the execution, why, strangely enough, over the years, at least in this country, a number of wardens who have performed large numbers of executions in the 30s and 40s when they were prevalent, nonetheless, despite the fact they did the jobs and pulled the switches or pushed the buttons many, many times, were nonetheless very strong opponents of capital punishment. They did the jobs, and they did it frequently, far more frequently than anybody in my generation of wardens would have to do. But nonetheless, they were opposed to it. And I have a feeling that when this is all over, I don't think I'm going to suddenly make any great changes and become an opponent of capital punishment. But I think that I'm going to be able to better understand the search for another way.
They're just starting to feel. It's just now people are starting to realize that it's probably going to happen. But there's still people that'll, all the way up until the last day, even people that do get executed sometimes don't even believe they're going to be executed till they get in there. But it's starting to build a little bit, you know, people are starting to be a little quieter, you know, the last little comments are being kicked around about it, and sad feelings are going around. Some people, maybe there's a little bit of fear, but it's just a line, and you just got to wait in line until it happens, and you got to watch all this happen, and it's just torture.
But then one thing that has helped me a great deal, I had an old minister tell me one time and reminded me that we're all under the death penalty. We're all dying. None of us has a guarantee of tomorrow. The only difference is these fellows has a date set. They know that such and such a date, I'm going to be placed in the gas chamber and I'm going to die.
As of yesterday, the Attorney General's office was of the opinion that he would not be granted relief by the state Supreme Court. They have also filed a petition for clemency with the governor. It does not appear that the governor will grant relief on that request, although he has to have a hearing on it. His greatest hope at this point in time lies with the Federal District Court in Jackson, Judge Barber, who has handled this case on previous occasions. There's probably at least a 50-50 chance that Judge Barber will grant a stay of execution. However, there is some discussion as to how long the stay will be. It could be 6 months, it could be 2 months, it could be a week, it could be a few days. We're going to proceed on the assumption that even if the execution is stayed for the 20th, that it will not take too terribly long for the stay to be dissolved, so that we can continue to be in a state of preparedness for this. I think probably, unless somebody moves very quickly today, and I honestly don't expect that, we're going to come down to the wire on this thing. The chamber has been thoroughly examined by manufacturing reps and by us, and will be examined again by us Sunday and again Tuesday afternoon. So I don't expect any difficulties, but I want you all to be aware, for those of you who have a role in this thing, however indirect it may be, that if there's a malfunction of some kind, if the solution in the cyanide did not mix properly, the execution will be carried out. It's simply a process of having to clear the chamber and do it again. Obviously, I think everybody hopes that doesn't happen. But I want this staff to be professional. We're going to discuss how we did what we did and what we can do to improve it, because there are going to be other executions here in the next year and a half, 2 years. This boy's mother is a part-time law enforcement official. He comes from a relatively good family. They are entitled to some dignity in terms of the way we do our jobs. Now, for those of you who are in the custody ranks in particular, and believe me, I understand. So I've worn the uniform too. I understand this man killed a police officer. That doesn't change anything. If he killed one of your best friends on the guard force, we'd still have to carry this out in a responsible fashion.
We have to repent, and we have to come to the knowledge of the truth. We have to accept Jesus Christ as our Savior. And I know, Edward, that God is working on you. I see evidence of things taking place in your life, that I know that God's not left you alone, that He's with you.
I really feel it, although, like you said, there still need to be, I believe, a deeper repentance on my part. And I just have to wait and let God work on me with that.
I've seen things in you that I see God dealing, and I see God bringing you to a place of repentance, that you don't have anything to worry about, not a thing. But you know, it's like I told you, God knows your beginning and He knows your end. He knows Edward Johnson better than me, better than anybody. God knows you, because God created you.
Defense attorneys for convicted murderer Edward Earl Johnson tried again today to postpone the execution of their client, now scheduled for this coming Wednesday. Governor Bill Allain, however, refused to make a decision on granting executive clemency, saying that was premature. As of this time, though, it appears the execution may take place as scheduled. Jeff Baselli was at the state penitentiary at Parchman today and filed the story.
While his attorneys are reportedly employing more radical tactics to save their client, prison officials say that Johnson has all but resigned himself to his fate.
I heard last night on the news that someone had been in touch with Governor Allain to ask for clemency, but he had told them that he wasn't making any decision that was premature at this time. You know, he was waiting to the outcome of my appeals. So he didn't deny clemency and he didn't grant it. So just waiting, you might say. Other than that, things stand, you know.
It's a long way.
Yeah, it's a tiring wait, you know. I think sometime I might just have to wait up to that last moment, you know. Maybe the last hour, maybe the last minute, maybe the last second, who knows? I just got to prepare myself for that. And I am prepared. I've never been able to be with everyone at one time. You might say having contact that I could really actually touch them and hug them and be with them, you know. That's a new experience because it's been through a while, you might say, through a screen, through a bar. So,
always?
Yeah, always. For all the 7 years I've been here, it's been that way. This is just what you call, this is a special privilege, you know. So it's really a help, you know, to give me strength.
I'm just praying and ask the Lord to please change things. You know, He's a man that can change anything. There ain't nothing impossible for Him to do. So I'm just praying that it will come on out, and maybe He will be back home with us.
You're a policewoman in New York.
Part-time. And I know how they get confession out of people. They usually got a new technique. They don't beat them out. They had a sting gun one time. That was eliminated. So now they got all the little ways to get confession out of them when you didn't really commit the crime because you're frightened. You'll say anything. If you had somebody have a gun pointed at you, I'd say anything myself. Maybe this way give me a chance to have a little life left.
It's not fair at all.
I don't think it's fair. Nobody in the family thinks it's fair. People on the outside say it's not fair. It's just not fair, the way it was run, the way it was done. But one person can't do everything. People need help. So who's gonna help us?
Next week, it's gonna be rough here because you got black guys, and most guys that are here are black, and they gonna all feel close. They're gonna get, most of them gonna unite, and it's gonna be rough. A lot of them gonna feel for Edward, which it's gonna be rough for us also, you know, because some of us been here 6 years, 10 and more, and we got close to him, you know, which we shouldn't be. But you can't help it when you're working around some guys like this, you know, this long a period of time. And then to see him actually have to go to the gas chamber, we shouldn't be that way. But that's the way it is, and we can't do anything about it.
Do you think he did it?
I don't, you know, I can only say I don't believe where he been around me now. You know, for the last 6.5 years, I don't believe it.
Do you think an innocent man might be going to his death?
Possibility.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Do many of the officers feel like you do?
I believe the majority of them around here do. But it was, you know, he, like I say, everybody, you know, likes him around here. All the white and black officers, you know. He's an easygoing fella. He don't get nobody no trouble, so, you know.
But that's terrible, isn't it? The majority of officers here feel that he might not have done it.
Right.
Has he got bedding down there, Roger?
No, sir. Okay, does not.
I don't know. You want 2 mattresses?
No, I didn't put this.
I want you to get that straightened out after you get set. How you doing, Weasel? All right. Get your shower shoes here.
Dust
towel.
Dust.
Code 14.
All right, you got everything, Edwin? Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Check on him specifically and ask, you know, see if he needs anything, okay?
All right.
I moved from my cell to what you call, I guess, 24-hour watch cell, and they move you 72 hours before your execution is carried out. That's, you know, in case of he limited people that's going by the cell you're in, and easy access to the back.
I really,
don't know what to say. All our hearts are with you. Okay. Good luck. I am hoping you're going to get a stay in the next 48 hours.
I expect so. I expect. This waiting process.
Hi, Rod.
See my shirt?
Say what you gotta say, boy. This is your last chance. Goodbye. Okay. I'll let Earl and Chaplain know at this point in time. The chaplain's gonna go on into the observation room.
They're here?
Check
That's good. That's good. Are you locked? Yeah, I'm here.
You hear it, all right, once that door closes open, that door closes.
Inside, we were one, just start. Let's see if he's right now. See here wearing me out. What's it? Mosquito wearing.
Can't do a damn thing about it, do you?
I'm afraid I'll suck this shit.
He was here, but he was back on the back, so he didn't get to work. So.
Well, I pushed Cos's coat.
Real bad.
Real bad. Raining. Real bad.
Like freight for last night. We had good service. We stayed in service after we left from here at about 12 o'clock.
Is little Watson still the pastor?
Yes, he's still in. We had good service. They said to tell you to keep the spirit. You know, prayer change things, so it's in the hands of the Lord. Everybody's praying for you. And hope you're praying for yourself, which I'm quite sure you are.
Yeah.
You got the community behind you, know. They believe in your innocence, and they're doing all they can. And who knows? It's not the last day yet.
Yeah, but they finally believe they said that. They finally believe it now.
Well, yeah, they finally believe it.
Well, we're down to a little under 36 hours and still have no stay of execution. One more avenue of appeal was closed this morning. The U.S. Supreme Court turned down a request from the inmate to rehear his petition that they denied a week ago. So basically, it comes down to his last chances are with the state Supreme Court and the governor's office or the federal district court in Jackson.
Ooh, you're like the sun, chasing all of the rain away. When you joy for always. Oh, boy, I love you so. I can't find other ways to let you know, but you can be sure I'm yours for always.
I don't have any personal animosity towards him. He committed a very, very serious crime. More than a crime of passion and more than what somebody would do if they were just caught by surprise or frightened in the act of committing a property crime. I mean, he shot the man 5 times. But he's a guy who's been on death row almost 8 years and nobody's ever heard from him, you know. He's a typical death row prisoner. Very quiet.
You're sure of his guilt?
Yeah. I don't have any qualms at all about him having committed the crime. No.
I will love you so for always.
We can't cut that off.
Undoubtedly, I think the legal system has always worked on the basis of some difference in terms of what a private attorney, a private, well-paid attorney can accomplish for somebody and what a public defender can accomplish. That's a flaw in the system, but I don't think it has to be a fatal flaw. I think we have to worry about, is the person guilty? Did he clearly, beyond all reasonable doubt, commit the crime?
Well, you know, he told me to call him about 6. No doubt. You want to call your office? Okay. Okay. All right. He just met with Judge Barber. They having a hearing on some of the procedure things that was in the appeal that he filed. And he's in the hearing right now. Clive is. That was Ken Rose. Yeah. He told me to call back in about another hour. And he could let me know something.
All right. This is a classic situation. Wardens find themselves, you make choices about your death row inmates, you know. And it doesn't come down to a case of whether you feel any affection or emotion about a given case. That's not the situation with this guy at all. But what happens is, last night, for instance, when I went down there to move him, I had to walk by the cell of another inmate who deserves to be on death row. He killed a police officer in cold blood and has a prior criminal record. There are others here on the road that I'd much prefer to take to the gas chamber than this guy. I think I have found myself having to work through that more than anything else. It's not a case of emotion or affection for this kid. It's just a case of, geez, you know, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to go, but maybe he ought to be 19th in line instead of 1st.
All right.
They're determined to execute me. I'm determined for them not to execute me, because I don't believe that. Considering the way my case has been, I don't see it. And I don't believe it for 1 minute. And I refuse to break anyway. I can't do that. I refuse to. Now, it's good now that I can be, you know, around my family to hug them, you know, let them sing to me and stuff like that. And that really give me a good feeling. They give me more strength, and I give them strength. We draw off each other. And another thing is that I think about from non-contact in 7 years, you know, I think about all the other things I missed. You know, like, I haven't even seen the moon in, say, about 3 times in 7 years. And out of that 7 years, there hasn't been one time that I actually got a chance to go outside and to look up at the stars and the moon, you know. And it's a weird feeling. You know, even though I'm chained down, but it's a weird feeling that be able to look up and see the moon, the actual moon and the stars up on your heads. A little wonder, I can't do nothing but get a glance of it. So, you just feel it. You feel good. You feel almost free, even though I know the circumstances in a way where they got me, now. But I'd like that again, and I expect to get it again.
It's strange, it's not just the inmates here. In this last 24 hours we're praying for you, it's also most of the staff on death row are hoping for a stay. And of course, myself and the film crew have been filming you for 2 weeks now.
See, it don't matter how you portray a person to be. You say dangerous, you say vicious, he might fight at the drop of a hat. That's the reports that's been given all this time, all these years of people here. But once you get to know somebody in a personal way, well, you can't help but be emotionally involved. Just like the guards. They've known me for 7 years. We kidded around, we might share things together. And that gets them involved just like in a way with the family, because they stay here actually as much as they are at home. We begin to get some kind of relationship. They can't stop that. That can't be stopped.
You surprised to see me back?
No, I'm hoping to see you. How you doing today? You doing all right? Yeah, you got to do it.
Everybody
see you again. Where you been?
At home. At home. Hey, Tim, how you making it?
I'm gonna make it together. Yeah. About 15 minutes.
Your mommy.
This is Earl Johnson. Yeah, hey. Oh, hey. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Clive told me to call about, this time, Yeah? Oh. Okay, then. I'll just wait. Okay, then. Well, let's see. The Fifth Circuit denied some of the claims that was on the petition. So now they're going to file it in the Fifth Circuit. It's on the way now. So he'll be up in the next 3 or 4 hours.
Just keep praying.
Meanwhile, Edward Earl Johnson sits on death row in Parchman, scheduled to die in the gas chamber at a minute after midnight. Don Cabana, warden of Parchman and acting corrections commissioner, says he's spoken with Johnson every day since the decision to execute him was made.
My conversations with him, I'm impressed with the fact that he's at peace with himself and has accepted the reality of this situation right now.
Cabana says the final stages of preparation at the prison have already begun. For this afternoon, Cabana says an institutional emergency situation will be declared, during which traffic through the prison will be limited as the final hours are counted down. Earlier today, Judge William Barber denied a request to stay the execution, and Johnson's lawyers have appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals.
In the name of Jesus Christ who died for us. Amen.
That's good news you don't see. Maybe some salt and pepper out of the kitchen.
Eat all that, you're gonna have something.
We do still have an execution that is proceeding on schedule. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has affirmed the conviction, I guess, and denied the request for a stay of execution from Edward Earl Johnson. Filings have already taken place with the United States Supreme Court. The Attorney General's office advises me that we may hear from the U.S. Supreme Court within an hour. I think it's fair to say that we do not expect the U.S. Supreme Court to issue any stays in this matter. It will apparently come down to the governor's office and any clemency petitions he may entertain. I can't conjecture about that. My impression from my conversations with the governor and the governor's office the last 2 days is that is not a strong likelihood either. So we are prepared to carry out this execution at 12:01 tomorrow morning or as soon after that time as possible.
Chaplain, do you think Edward Earl Johnson murdered that sheriff 7 years ago?
No, I do not. I've talked with him on several occasions, and he has more than one time told me that he did not do the crime that he's here for. He did not assault the ladies that was supposedly assaulted, and I believe him. His attorney says there are several good points that should be looked at, but yet it's so far in the game until nobody will hear them, which doesn't make sense at all to me. In a society that's supposed to be civilized and a caring society that cares for those people that are really down and out or downtrodden, and certainly Earl would be at this point, I think.
So you're saying, in your opinion, an innocent man is going to go to the gas chamber tonight?
I believe that, yes.
Well, this morning we lost in federal district court, not till noon, so that was later than we expected, and to be quite honest, I expected to win there, I really did. We had a hearing last night, everything went very well, and we had to win. The judge was out to get us, and he really did get us very badly, and after that I thought things were pretty much all over. Then we went to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we went to the judge's chambers there in Jackson. As I went into his office to file the appeal, I looked on the word processor, and he'd already written the denial of the appeal before we'd even done it. However,
He'd already written it?
He'd already written it. It was running out on the printer before we'd even filed the appeal, and he denied us oral argument. However, when...
Is that constitutional?
Well, I mean, who knows what's constitutional with these people, but it's absolutely abnormal and it's thoroughly unfair. But fortunately, in an effort to make things even worse for us, he really messed up. I mean, he hadn't considered it properly, and he really screwed up. Consequently, he gave us another issue for the Supreme Court when we were beginning to run out of issues, and we went to the Supreme Court at about 8 o'clock this evening, 4 hours before the date was due. I'm pretty sure we've got 4 judges there. We always have 2, and we may have 2 more. We need 1 more, probably, to get us staying. And we've got a real good issue, so, you know, you can't be confident on these things, but there's something going on, I hope. So, we'll see. I think we've got now about 3 hours left. That's not that abnormal. I mean, these things normally go down to the wire if you lose in the circuit court. The trouble is they've tried to screw us so badly, and everyone's out to get Edward Earl at the moment. We're going to be lucky. There's also the governor, and we're going to be lucky there if we get that, but we'll see, we'll hang in.
In just about 2 hours, Edward Earl Johnson will be in the gas chamber at Parchman Penitentiary, and unless the courts or the governor intervene between now and then, Johnson will die for the murder of a Mississippi lawman.
Johnson's attorneys are expected to fight the execution to the last, but Parchman officials are proceeding as planned, and at 4 p.m. today, the penitentiary entered a state of emergency operation.
Very cool. American simulator.
About 1 hour before the scheduled execution, Johnson will be moved from death row to the last night room, as it's referred to, where he will be held until taken to the gas chamber for execution scheduled for 1 minute after midnight.
In the event that there may be a stay and the Attorney General's office works to dissolve that stay, the state has until midnight before the 21st for the execution to go through.
According to state law, execution witnesses will include a representative from the sheriff's office, 2 ministers, 2 physicians, and 5 media representatives. 2 family members and 2 members of the victim's family may be present if they so request. It's not known if any such request has yet been made. In March 6.
Today was the day.
It seems very, very bad. I'm still not without hope. You know, I still just can't give up. But it looks real bad. You know, it looks very bad now. Everyone, you know, is with him, you know. Like, I feel just, you know, as much a part of him as a person could be. You know, like, I became as close as a brother to him, you know, and they've kept him here 7 years, you know, killing him daily. You know, now they're going to finally kill him, you know. Everyone here is dying tonight, you know, a part of them, you know, like, I can never be the same after this. I can never be the same, you know, like, we're supposed to be vicious and cruel, but this goes beyond anything that anyone could ever do. Lord have mercy.
Call Kenny and see what happens with the governor, right? All right, have him let us know as soon as we can. Bye-bye.
Stop.
7-2, for Christ's sake.
Yes.
Yeah, no, cool. Yeah, hi. Oh yeah, I talked with him about that. So you haven't heard anything from the governor? He denied. Okay. All right. Okay, I'll see you later. Bye-bye. It's the end of that.
Edward, it's time, son, to move to the isolation cell, okay? Hit the door.
I love you, my brother.
All right, Sam.
Take care, Earl.
All right.
Okay? Thank you. Chaplain's gonna need to come on back through there in just a second. We got some staunch friends here. Gonna get through this together. Did you eat any of that shrimp they brought you this evening?
Oh, yeah.
You said you'd never tried shrimp before, is that right?
No.
Hallelujah, peace I leave with you. Peace I give unto you. Peace I leave with you. Peace I give unto you. Peace I leave with you. Peace I give unto you. Not as the world gives, give unto you. Peace I leave with you.
Are you sleepy?
You know, went to sleep in a minute. No, I'm sleeping. I'm just tired. I guess it all, comes in on you. Not just comes in on you, you get tired. Strain, you're waiting. Well, call me, come through. Gotta keep everybody else up. I'm not really down now. I'm sleeping.
When we take you inside, they'll have to attach some little round, I forget what you call them, doohickeys that go to the electrocardiograph machine. They may need to remove a little hair to do that. That will happen at about 1:15. And at that point in time, we'll have about 5 minutes before we remove you from the isolation cell, okay? I've got about 11:33. Got about 12 minutes until the medic comes in and about 17 minutes until we remove you from the room, okay?
Edward, I think we're going to, we'd like to leave you with people here, okay? I think it's time for us to go. We want to say goodbye to you. Our hearts are with you, and we're still praying for you. Take it easy, man. Good luck. I want to get you.
Ladies and gentlemen, at 12:06 a.m., Wednesday, May 20th, Edward Earl Johnson was executed in the lethal gas chamber here at the Mississippi State Penitentiary in conformance with the sentence of the Circuit Court of Leake County. I'll be glad to entertain any questions you may have.
Do you have any last statements?
Yes, he did. He indicated his innocence and that he regretted the situation, but that he bore no ill will towards anyone. And he was thankful that the process was coming to a close for himself and his family. And stated that he was not guilty.
How long between the time the crystals hit the tray and the time the monitor showed cardiac arrest?
The time between the time the crystals, between the time the gas struck his face and the time cardiac arrest was pronounced was approximately 12 minutes. He was unconscious in less than a minute.
If we could, let's hear from the lawyer. He knew him.
Everyone's been very calm and collected about this. Well, let me tell you, I'm not calm and I'm not collected. I just came from talking with the family, and I asked you rhetorically what I was meant to say. What I was meant to say, why it happened. I stayed with Edward Johnson. I had a privilege to stay with Edward Johnson for the last hours of his life. And I can say he was a lot more calm than I was. And I can only say this. When the family asked me why, all I could say was, it's a sick world. It's a sick world. Thank you.
Hello there.
Hi. Hi.
Yes, very loudly. Paul, we're just seeing a big purple PH.
Oh.
Not your charming face.
Don't know why that is.
No. There he is. There he is. Yes.
God.
Are you a Skype virgin, Paul?
I'm afraid I am. Okay.
Right, so you are now live. We had some really brilliant questions lined up. I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourselves first?
No, you can introduce us, or I'll say I'm Clive and the other chap's Paul.
Well, obviously, hopefully you will all know that Clive Stafford Smith is the founder of Reprieve, and Paul directed the film that you've all just watched, 14 Days in May. I'm just going to start off with some questions that people put in while they were watching. Some of them are addressed to you both, and some of them are addressed to either Clive or Paul individually. I think I'll just start with one for Clive that Mitch asked, and he said, Clive, you were a young man when you were a young man. Can you hear me?
You went quiet for a minute, but if you start again, we'll be fine.
Mitch asked, Clive, you were a young man when this film was made. What effect did it have on you personally?
Well, I do think about that because 30 years on, I was the same age as Edward, so we were both 27 at the time, and I'm now 57, and Edward is not. And, you know, that to me is the greatest tragedy of this whole thing. There was an immense, I mean, it was a tragic thing altogether. It's ghastly. And I look at it and I think if I knew then what I know now, he'd be alive. But I do also look at it that I am so grateful that, particularly through the work Paul did and the film he made, that something positive was able to come of it. And there has been a tremendous amount of positivity in the sense of a bunch of young people who have helped us in the fight. So I guess that's really good.
That kind of slides in a bit to a question that someone else asked, in that someone was saying that in light of recent films that have been made about the American justice system, it kind of seems as bleak as ever. What progress has been made, and what do you think is the positive story that's come out of kind of the American justice system over the past 30 years, or are there no positives to report?
I think there's an awful lot of negative to report, and the negative includes the fact that we still don't realize what the problem is. And, you know, the problem, the death penalty is a ghastly thing, and we're gradually winning that battle. But the reason Edward Johnson got executed wasn't because of the death penalty. It was because of a rotten legal system that results in a lot of people getting caught up who had nothing to do with the crime. And, you know, look, I was just spending the evening working on the case of Chris Maharaj, who was sentenced to death 30 years ago. And he's still in prison, and he's as innocent as the day is long. I'm proud to say that Paul over there is going to make the documentary that's going to help get Chris free too. And, you know, this time Chris won't die, at least. I hope not. He's 78. He might die of old age. But we don't recognize all the problems in the legal system, so we're not beginning to solve them.
So quite a few people had some questions specifically for Paul. Sophia Begum asked kind of how difficult was this film to make into film?
I'll try and make a long story short. When the death penalty was brought back in the United States, I wrote the 37 states that brought it back. All of them said no, except Mississippi. Mississippi said you can't come and make a film on our death row, but you can make a film about conjugal visits. So I went to Mississippi prison. Obviously, you can't film conjugal visits, so I persuaded the governor of the prison to make a film. I discovered he was a liberal. I discovered that he didn't believe in the death penalty, and he persuaded his board to let me in. I wanted to make a film about the morality of the death penalty, and when it came to poor Edward Earl Johnson, and then involving Clive to represent him, it turned out this was the one person on death row who all the staff, from the vicar to the psychiatrist to the governor to the man that ran death row, said this is the guy that didn't do it. And it became a very difficult film for the team and I to make, because it seemed that no one wanted to kill this person, but they were going along with the system, you know.
I've got another one for you, Paul, as well. Where are we? So Alex Jagger asked, what did you think of the chief? Like, in the film, he seems to have quite a nuanced view of the death penalty.
The governor of the prison, I imagine, they mean Don Cabana.
Mm.
He was an extraordinary man. Well, he was the man that took the risk to let us in and make a film in very difficult circumstances. And he was a man that said to me privately in the middle of making the film, he probably didn't do it, and had to go along and do his awful job professionally. He made sure that the family were treated with extraordinary respect. So my empathy went went up with him after that. Clive will probably tell you, but briefly, after that, he was so upset with a man that he thought was innocent dying that he was responsible, part of the machinery that executed that man. He resigned and left the prison system and became a lecturer, an anti-death penalty lecturer in one of the state universities.
Yeah, Don, let me speak to that for a minute. Don was a remarkable guy. And on several levels, I've, sad to say, attended the executions of 6 of my clients. And, you know, while it's always ghastly, the way that Don behaved, letting us be with the family till the very last minute and letting us all be in the same room, was very human and very humane. And, you know, in other places, in Georgia, for example, they wouldn't let us be with the person that I was representing. You know, we were only allowed to talk to him on the phone from some other room. The other thing about Don was he did become a vehement opponent of the death penalty. I started refusing to call him as an expert witness because I called him twice and he had a heart attack each time. And, you know, I just didn't want to do that to him. And he did sadly die of that in the end. But in the meantime, he was a wonderful advocate because unlike me, you know, some lefty person who's always been opposed to the death penalty, to have him speak about being the person responsible for actually killing someone and, you know, being the person who thought it was okay at one point but had changed his mind was incredibly powerful. We did a thing on Channel 4 one time after dark where he and I were on one team, if you will, against the Dr. Death, who was the doctor who would diagnose people and their mental illnesses by sitting them in the electric chair in Texas and interviewing them there. And between us, Don and I were doing this program, and we wore this poor guy down by making him drink too much, I think, on television, and until he finally threw his hands up and agreed to be against the death penalty. Don was just a great advocate and a really good friend. He was a good guy.
So Elijah, who's watching this, who's 13 and he's been told to watch this by his English teacher. He's one of a few people in the chat who seem to have been told by a very nice English teacher to come and watch this stream. He wants to know about how do you think the death penalty affects the younger generation and their views on crime and punishment?
Well, Elijah, let me tell you first, the way it's going to affect you, mate, is you need to come and work at Reprieve and let us exploit you and all your good work for the next 50 years. Look, I think the death penalty highlights a lot of the problems in the legal system that impact a lot of other people. You know, again, if you think of Chris Maharaj, he's no longer on death row, but he's 78 and he's going to die in prison. And when I did his resentencing trial where his sentence was changed from death to life imprisonment. And it's still a death sentence. He's still going to die in that prison. He's just going to die a lot slower. So I think in one way, the death penalty is a positive thing. I know it sounds bizarre, but it's something that makes people pay attention to things they otherwise might not pay attention to. You know, you hear someone serving life and people think, oh, that's a doddle. You know, it's not. It's awful. What we do to people in prison generally is awful. So what I'm hoping is that this will inspire you, Elijah, and all your mates and your teacher. Don't let your teacher off the hook, and get all of you to help us work for these people who are the most powerless people in the world, where the government wants to trample on them and sacrifice them somehow to this, you know, bizarre, imaginary god of deterrence. I hope you'll come and help us.
So a question for you both, but maybe Paul can start. How do you think that public opinion has changed towards the death penalty since the film was made, if at all? And how do you see the system changing?
I think one of the key things about the film, I think I should preface it by saying that 6 months after this film went out, Clive and I went back with an investigative journalist and found the real killer of the man that Edward Earl Johnson was executed for, and we made a follow-up film called The Journey. And I think the pair of those films together, as the BBC sold them around the world, and gaining literally thousands of letters from people, was one of the, to answer the question, instigators in Clive and I deciding to start Reprieve at the beginning of Kitchen Sink operation. And it's become a hugely successful organization for human rights and has saved, as Clive will tell you, over 500 lives in the last 15 years. So I think that it's had a huge effect, the pair of films, since we made it.
In terms of what popular opinion is, you're always going to find people who think that, an eye for an eye is somehow going to be a cool thing to do. And I suppose the saying that we have is, why do we kill people who kill people to show that killing people's wrong? You're always going to have people who take that view, which I think is just deranged. But that's not the issue to me. To me, the issue is, I think as Paul was saying, there can be 5 billion people who think that the death penalty is okay, and they're going to lose if there are a few committed people who are there to make sure that these people we want to just go out and kill are not are properly represented. And so to go back to poor old Elijah, who's probably still watching, if we have a small group of people, which includes the 32 people at Reprieve, it includes Georgia, by the way, so don't think you can escape this. If there's a small group of committed people who are committed to the idea of doing justice, then we make sure justice is done.
I think that links into something that Eamon Sheely just asked, was about how can the public help the fight against the death penalty, or is it purely a legal fight?
Oh, God, no, it's not a legal fight at all. The death penalty is about power. There is no moment in life, I think, when someone is quite so powerless as when the whole government just wants to strap you in and murder you. I mean, whatever happens, and obviously there are dreadful things that happen when an individual does that, but when the government does it, the imbalance is far greater. And so it's about power, and it's about redressing that power, and the law does it in one way, but we can all do it in different ways. And so, for example, it doesn't matter who you are, you've got a talent that we can use, or you can use, in order to achieve justice. Paul does it by making films. You can write about it. But there are other projects. I'm in the middle of one right now, which I'm very excited about, which is about art. And I was just talking at a school yesterday morning where what we're trying to do is we've got these guys in Guantanamo, and, Guantanamo is the same as the death penalty. Everyone in Guantanamo faced the death penalty to begin with. Everyone's forgotten about them, and we need to get them justice. And so we had a bunch of paintings that prisoners in Guantanamo had made, which got censored because they were about being tortured. And obviously the US authorities didn't want pictures of torture coming up. So instead, what we did was I wrote detailed descriptions along with Shelby in our office, and we got the detailed descriptions out. And now we want artists to reproduce those pictures in whatever way they like. And these could be famous artists. I hope we'll have a few of them. But it can be other people in school too. And then, we'll have exhibitions, and we'll get people to confront in very real terms what sort of ghastly torture has been done to the prisoners in Guantanamo Bay. And there it's going to be artists. And there's any talent at all, even be it writing to people in prison who have no friends. Writing to people is very powerful. I think Paul will agree with me that when I say that the charities that have been established where people simply become pen friends to folk on death row have been amongst the most positive results of 14 Days in May.
That's really great. So I'm just looking through some other questions that people have put in, just so people on the live chat know. There's about a 30-second delay from when you put questions in the chat to when we get them. So if you think we're not getting to your questions fast enough, that would be why. So kind of a question for you both, like, how do you stay optimistic after kind of all that you've personally seen and wrestled with and challenged?
Paul, you go first.
I think, because being involved in an organization like Reprieve, which has a fantastic team, where there is real tangible results of the teamwork, getting people who are often innocent off death row right around the world is incredibly
incredibly rewarding, and therefore spurns you on not just for the people who work in Reprieve and Clive's fantastic work, but also sort of to make people like me, the small company I run, to make films where you're trying to persuade broadcasters to put a dwindling pot of their international money to, unlock stories that haven't been told before about people in dire situations, which doesn't happen as often as it used to. When I made 14 Days in May, there was much more money available in those days to tell stories of disenfranchised people around the world in a way that just doesn't happen now, where we're obsessed with ratings and reality shows. And it's a great shame the BBC is not repeating 14 Days in May, but it's as Clive had already mentioned, we're about to do another big film with him about a man that should not be in prison, has been in prison for 24 years. So the fight goes on, really.
In terms of staying positive, I think that you just have to look at what we end up doing to be positive. Yeah, I've lost 6 of my guys over the years, and that's awful. And going to watch them get killed. But we've won hundreds. We win 98% of the cases we do. And a win is different in some cases. I mean, I'm glad to say an awful lot of people walk free who are innocent. And then there are some people who we get off death row who should be out of prison. So it's not always the sort of win you'd really like. But my goodness, when you think about the different tasks out there, I just don't understand people who want to spend every day working on some corporate law firm thing where, they're representing some corporation that's got plenty of money already. Whereas in our situation, we're representing people who are in such dire straits, and we win so often, and we get to take their lives and give it back to them. And, that's amazing. So I don't think you have to be a delusional optimist to think that's fantastic. And people today, the nattering nabobs of negativity today, who say that we're in such bad shape when we're dealing with Donald Trump and so forth. Oh, come on. Compare today with 1939 to 45, or compare it to the time that the Americans wanted to blow up the entire world with nuclear weapons if the Russians didn't. I mean, we are so much better off with human rights. Now, it's not to say that we don't have to fight day in, day out to preserve them against some of the lunatics who want to take them away. But, we can do that. We have tremendous influence and power to do that. So, no, I don't think I have to sit around being all sad and long-faced.
With some notable exceptions, Clive, China, Iran.
Well, those people, they've been there forever, haven't they? And, the Chinese haven't exactly been paragons of virtue for the last many years. So it hasn't got any worse. I think China, in some ways, is getting better. They're talking about abolishing the death penalty, for goodness sake. Now, they're not going to do that, and repressive countries are not going to do the right thing if we don't stand up to them. And if we don't force our own government, for example, to stop kowtowing to Saudi Arabia and all these dreadful regimes. So, yeah, we've got lots of work ahead of us. But I think that in my lifetime, my God, the 30 years I've done this, I look at the number of wonderful, positive things, even if it's just being there to help someone's dignity be maintained through an incredibly undignified process. That's a wonderful thing to be able to do too.
Just related to that, I think you partially answered on it, but you could maybe expand a little bit more. Orna Clark was asking in chat how President Trump has been a strong supporter of the death penalty and has been consistent in his approach. How do you see the impact of that, and what his possible future policies on capital punishment and how that could affect the USA and the work that you do?
Well, lots of people think it's a bit rude to talk about President Trump's psychological issues, but I'm going to tell you, I think the man's mad. Look, he is a dreadful person to give that sort of power to, but in many ways is the best thing that's ever happened to human rights. There are people who suffer horribly under the jackboot of the Trump administration. Let that not be denied. But at the same time, for the last 8 years, we had President Obama in office, and I voted for Obama, and he tried to be a decent person, but he did awful things. To take just one example, he said he was going to close Guantanamo. He didn't, and instead he substituted detention without trial with assassination of people around the world. People don't seem to know that every Tuesday in the White House he instituted Terror Tuesday, where they would have a little PowerPoint display about who we're going to murder this week, and they'd do the sort of yay or nay like a Roman emperor. So Obama was ghastly, but people wouldn't listen. Today, Trump is ghastly, he's worse, but people will listen. And as a result, we're getting traction on issues of human rights that we haven't had for the last 8 years. And I think in a bizarre way, that's going to help us do more for the cause of human rights over the next 4 years than we've been able to do in the Obama administration.
So one for you, Paul, as well. For people who do want to make films and make art about difficult subjects like this, like in kind of touching on a little bit about what you were talking about earlier, in the kind of current climate for making films, like what's the best way for people who are interested in that kind of work to go about making film on subjects like this that really matter?
Luckily, since we made that film 30 years ago, technology has much improved and got much lighter and much cheaper. So it's much easier now for the impassioned filmmaker who doesn't believe in the death penalty, believes in human rights, with quite inexpensive gear, to make a film about a case of injustice or a human rights abuse in a way that years ago we would have to make with a full crew, cameraman, and sound recorders, and celluloid, a very expensive way of working. But the digital revolution has meant a lot more people young filmmakers can be enfranchised to make films quite cheaply. And many of those films, of course, as we all know, are turning up at festivals and on television channels all over the world. So the digital revolution has been fantastic for expanding the breadth of human rights abuses to make films go to a wider audience. So that's what I mean. To answer the question, that's what I encourage people to do. It's not difficult these days to be able to get a camera and a recorder and go out and make the films that you want to make.
But the other thing, Georgia, let me butt in there, because there are two other things they can do. First, they can go do an internship with Paul at Wild. I think they should definitely do that, and then work with him for the next 30 years. But then the second thing is they can come and work with us. I mean, you, Georgia, are a good example of someone who patronizes me all the time because I'm old and totally technologically useless. And Georgia, just if I may boast about her on camera here for a bit, you'll probably censor and cut me off in a minute, but is introducing new ways that we can reach broader audiences, which is fantastic. And what I was saying earlier about advocacy, it's not about standing up in court all the time. I love doing that. It's great fun. It's interesting. But you can do the same thing by working with an organization like Reprieve. And I'll say that I don't think there are many that do it quite as well as some of the people in our office, but who come and use the new forms of media to reach audiences that we could never reach before. Just to give you one example, instead of publishing things the old-fashioned way, where you had to get some newspaper to publish it and they edited all the good phrases out and made you sound much less eloquent. Well, what you can do today is we can do that. We can do it both in writing, but also on film. And then we can tweet it around through all the friends we have who reach millions and millions of people. And we can cut out old-fashioned media if we want to. We can work with them if they're going to do good stuff, as Paul does. But we can go around them if we have to. And we can only do that if you come and work with Reprieve and do exactly as Georgia tells you.
So Will Jones on Facebook just asked, how close do you think we are to an end to the death penalty in the USA?
Well, we're 2,822 people away as of tonight. Last night they killed someone in Georgia, where I spent many years of my life. So, yeah, we're winning that battle. But the problem is that, we're winning it too slowly for the individuals. I mean, right now, I think we're so much closer. The executions have come down from 99 a few years ago to 20 last year. And I think that we at Reprieve have contributed a lot to make that happen. But there are still thousands of people. If they were to execute 20 people a year until they cleared death row, that would be 200, that'd be 100 years. So, you know, we can't ever be smug until it's abolished. And it's only going to be abolished by concerted efforts on many, many fronts. Yeah, we can abolish it state by state. Yeah, we can try to persuade the Supreme Court. Yeah, we can hope that pharmaceutical companies, as they have recently, stand up for their own beliefs and try to prevent their drugs from being used in executions and so on and so forth. But it is a line-by-line, person-by-person battle. And we can't ever look at this as a structure that's somehow going to crumble. We've got to look at it as individuals that we have to represent.
I am just going through some more questions now. So there are quite a few people talking about what other resources, if they want to learn more about the death penalty, what books and websites and things that maybe it's a good question possibly for you, Paul, because sometimes when we work in the field, we can get a little bit too dug in. Is there anything that you found useful for people who aren't lawyers and who want to learn a little bit more about the death penalty, apart from obviously watching 14 Days in May?
Oh, crikey. That's a difficult one. We live in a very sophisticated now social media-orientated society, and it's very easy to find out all sorts of things, all sorts of ways of getting the information you need to help in any way you can. And it's one of the frustrating things is because it's now so easy. I'm inundated at my little company with human rights ideas from really passionate, young, talented people, and it's very difficult to get those films commissioned. Sadly, you know, the avenues to go down. So increasingly, as we all know, like publishing, films that auteurs want to make about issues of the day that matter, it's much easier now to get those and put them online. So my advice is to, as I did, I used to make in my teens before I started went to the BBC, really poor amateur film, but I did it. It's having that passion and following your nose to. It's not difficult these days. Much easier than when I'm in 14 Days in May with Clive.
So let me respond to that too. There are several things one can say about that. The first thing is I'll tell you what no one at Reprieve ever does, which is read the damn book I wrote on it. That's only used to prop up people's
Clive,
but I think
it's too long, Clive. That's one.
It's got lots of words in it, Paul. Yeah, words. Yeah. It's very short for anyway. Injustice is about Chris Maharaj, and there are lots of great books out there in which I don't include anything I wrote. There are some things though that you can do. You know, one I sort of mentioned it briefly before, which is to write to someone on death row. I don't think there's any way that you can get a better experience of what this is really all about than dealing with the human beings that are the victims of it. And, you know, my mother, who's 90, wrote to Tracy Henson on death row in Mississippi. And, you know, whatever your views on the death penalty, they're going to change, even if you're against it. When I went to America, I was 19, and I was against the death penalty. But then I met the people involved. And boy, did that make a difference. And it really shocked me visiting them. I thought, you know, what am I going to talk to these guys about? They're stuck on death row, and I'm this really lucky person who's going to go off around the world or whatever. But I learned so much from meeting those human beings, and I think writing to them is a tremendously important thing. The next thing you need to do is you need to come and volunteer at Reprieve, and then, you know, we'll make you do more. We'll make you go to America or Pakistan or whatever. And, you know, to me, that was life-changing too. Obviously, Reprieve didn't exist when I began. But going to America and trying to work to help the individuals, I learned so much. And you know, for example, you look at the British legal system. If you're thinking of going into law in Britain, don't even think about it. until you start doing something in the US or elsewhere. What on earth is that noise in the background?
The cleaners have arrived at Reprieve.
There do seem to be some fantastic noises going on there.
Yeah,
So,
it's a late night in the office.
It is a late night in the office, but come to Reprieve. Try to get people to be a bit quieter there, and work very hard on cases, and you'll become much better at whatever you want to do.
So I'm just going to give a 5-minute warning to people in the chat that we're going to start winding down. So if you've got any burning questions, to ask them now. A couple of people are asking about the death penalty, not just in the US, but around the world. What are what countries are kind of the top executioners, and what people can do about the death penalty, not just in the US, but in other countries as well.
So you've got lots of different awful places, of course, and China is a paragon of non-virtue, but you've also got like the country with the biggest death row is Pakistan, bizarrely, over 8,000 people on death row there, and it's a classic example of using small individual human beings as pawns in a political system where, I was talking to a judge in Pakistan one time, and he told me he thought that 60% of the people on death row were innocent, for goodness sake. I mean, the quality of representation there, when you have a court-appointed lawyer, he or she gets paid the equivalent of $23 to represent you for goodness knows 3 years or however long the case takes. So it's abysmal in a place like that. There's obviously Iran is another shocking place that has a lot of executions. But then there are a lot of countries that are very susceptible to change, and we're working in various African countries where the death penalty has just been accepted as a norm, and in the Middle East. And these are places where you can make a huge difference because people have never heard of the idea that actually, no, this is really barbaric and achieves nothing. And so, we're making a lot of headway in those countries. And it isn't a question of whether the death penalty is going to die. It's a question of when. And, when the history books are written, they're not going to say that burning witches at the stake were a great thing, and they're not going to say that torturing people to death in the electric chair was a great thing. It is so barbaric that it's not true. So we're going to win the battle. It's a matter of how long it's going to take.
Just because I have the information up here, and quite a few people were asking who were the top executing countries last year. It was China, followed by Iran, followed by Saudi Arabia, followed by Iraq, followed by Pakistan, followed by Egypt, followed by the United States. So there are a couple more questions that have just come through. One specifically for you, Clive. This is from Di Stubbs, who said, does Wilf...
Hello, Di.
Who said, does Wilf, who for people who don't know is Clive's son, want to become a human rights lawyer, or does he want to be something way more cool?
Wilf, who is 8, wants to be way more cool than his father. Wilf takes a keen interest in human rights, and indeed, as an American citizen, he's very concerned about Donald Trump. And he asked me, age 8, recently, he said, I'm not going to go to America again unless you get a letter from President Trump promising not to torture me, which is a pretty shocking thing for an 8-year-old to say. But Wilf currently is not aiming to be a human rights lawyer. He's aiming to be the world's greatest Minecraft redstone engineer, which may mean nothing to you, I suspect, but I think it'll mean a lot to people who are a little bit younger than you and me. That's what he wants to do now, and we'll just have to see. I'm not going to tempt fate by saying that I promise he'll never be a hedge fund manager, but we'll just have to wait and see.
A couple of people were asking about if there is anything that we can do in countries that are more insular, such as the North Koreas and the Chinas in the world, about where public opinion is a little bit harder to get in, what we can do about pressuring our own governments, whether that be the UK or the US, to act and do more.
It is an interesting issue, and I've got to say a huge amount of what we at Reprieve do is about maneuvering people who are our allies, or should be our allies, to do more. So, for example, if we can't get into Saudi Arabia, and we can't, then we can do a great deal to help protect people in Saudi Arabia. And, you know, a good example were the kids who were facing execution by crucifixion, for goodness sake, for having the temerity to demonstrate against the government. And, you know, whatever you think about the Saudi Arabian government, surely we all have the right to demonstrate. And, you know, it's entirely plausible that the Saudi Arabian government doesn't care what I think and doesn't care what you think. But the British government cares. And we were able to put a lot of pressure on the British government to force them to stand up for the principles that they at least pretend they believe in. And by doing that, we can force them to raise these issues in a forceful way, which hopefully will have a positive effect around the world. And the same's true of America. America, for whatever reason, even though we execute our own people, if other countries are trying to execute an American, we get terribly upset about that. And so, again, it is possible to get the Americans to intervene. The US has intervened quite forcefully in the Philippines, where President Duterte, who's another lunatic, has been encouraging people to assassinate 8,000 people so far in the 1 year of his presidency. And he announced that he wanted to kill 3 million drug addicts, for goodness sake. And, you know, maybe he won't listen to me, he won't listen to the Pope, apparently, but he will listen if we mobilize enough international opinion. So I think, yeah, there's a huge amount we can do to force governments who should be friendly to do the right thing in helping to influence even unfriendly governments.
So I'm just going to finish off with a question for you both about the making of the film, and if you have a particular memory of working with Edward that you'd want to share.
Go ahead, Paul.
I think the worst, not surprisingly, the worst thing about making the film was the last 12 hours when Clive and his team had tried so hard to save his life in those final appeals to the governor, and it's just, we had great hope that we all did, that he'd be exonerated, and it didn't happen. So spending the last hours of Edward Earl Johnson's life with him was very painful, because we got to know him. I'd known him for 3 years as his appeals. The appeals process took their course, and so he'd become a friend. I played chess with him every day in those last 2 weeks, and he knew a lot about my family. I knew a lot about his, and it was not just a television character. It was someone who'd become a friend, being killed in the most barbaric way. A man that didn't do it. A man that we were then later proved. So the memory I have of that film is the pain of those last 12 hours.
Oh, I have such mixed emotions about all of this, because it was awful. It was dreadful, dreadful. And, you know, Edward was young and he was a nice lad, and I really liked him. And it was also surreal. And in a way, that surreal quality helped him. You know, I walked into the gas chamber with Edward, and you know, as I walked in there with him, and which was thanks to Don Cavanagh, the warden, who let me do it, and he said, as I gave him a hug in the gas chamber, he said, "Is there something you know that I don't know?" And I didn't really understand what he meant to begin with, and I mumbled something stupid in reply. But obviously, what he meant ultimately was he thought that the fact there were all these cameras around meant that someone was going to call a cut, and it wasn't going to happen. And he really, really didn't believe it was going to happen until the very last minute. And in so many ways, that was good, because it gave him hope up until the very last second. Now, you know, there's nothing good that you can say about the fact that they ultimately killed him. But what one can say is that I think through the people who were fighting for him, whether it was, you know, myself doing some of the legal work with Rob McDuff, or Paul and his team who were there clearly as his friends, or some of the guards who were decent human beings. You know, I think between everyone, it was possible to make an unbelievably inhuman event a tiny, tiny bit more human. And in a way, if that's all we were able to achieve, I think at least that was an honorable thing to be able to do.
Right, I am just going to draw everything to a close. People can find out more about Reprieve's work on our website, where you can join our mailing list, where you'll get actions where you can help people who are currently on death row, and you can donate to help fund our work. You can follow us on Twitter at Reprieve. You can follow us on Facebook by searching for Reprieve, and just keep up to date on everything on our website. So there have been lots and lots of you following and asking some really good questions and having really good and lovely and civilized conversations and live chat. So thank you for that. And thank you, Clive and Paul, for your time as well.
Thank you very much.
We're just pulling to an end. So thank you very much for everybody who has sat with us for the past 2 hours. I hope you all have a really nice evening. So we're just pulling to a stop.